Okay, Thursday morning, everyone. Lovely to have you with me. A bit of a roundup today, as normal. Just talking a wee bit about transfers again, what's happening with specific players, but also maybe a few things that I've noticed so far about the transfer business and the speed at which maybe Celtic are doing things this year that we can read into. So yeah, we'll have a wee discussion today about a few things. Just very quickly, everyone, I'm not going to labour the point at all. We're 40 away. I don't know if you can see that. Terrible. We're 40 away from 15,000 subscribers. So we can get there today if just 40 of you who watch the channel and aren't subscribed, just click that button. And then I can say all my thanks for your support and get all that stuff out of the way. Anyway, we'll get there, I'm sure. Thank you all of you for your support. Transfer update, just starting. Benjamin Nygren update coming from Sky Sports' Anthony Joseph last night, saying that we have agreed a fee of £1.7 million to sign him. He has already verbally agreed terms with us, and we will now look to finalise the move. So a couple of things here. First of all, the transfer fee, I think it's like €2 million. Which is like £1.7 million. Seems like very good value, I would say, for a player who scored 15 goals from midfield in the Danish Superliga last season. If that doesn't impress you enough, I think the fact that he's recently broken into the Sweden international team, and yeah, I mean, without knowing, you would kind of think that he's going to be there for a while going forward. I get the impression, again, I don't know for sure, I get the impression that Sweden are kind of rebuilding a bit and are maybe just starting to have a new wave of player coming through, like Alexander Isak, for example. I know he's been there for a number of years, but I think there's a few players coming through, and potentially Nygren is the kind of player who's going to be a regular in that Sweden international team for years to come. So I think that if we're able to get him in for £1.7 million, that'd be extremely good value. If he wasn't out of contract in 6 months' time, we'd probably be paying at least 5 or 6 million for him. So, yeah, think really good. Think he's a player who can come in and can make a difference. I think the big thing I'm taking away from this is the speed at which Celtic appear to be making this deal happen, and maybe more than that, maybe like the general speed we're doing our transfer business this summer. So you compare like this time last year, I think the first summer signing we made was Vil Sinizalo, and that was made on July the 16th. So like I know this Nygren deal hasn't been concluded yet, but we are talking the best part of a month ahead of where we were this time last year. And I think as fans, there was a bit of a frustration this time last year that a number of the big signings we made, Trusty, Engels, Ida, McCowan, were signed pretty late on into the transfer window. I mean, I think all of those players were signed after we'd started playing competitive matches. So it kind of felt like all of them had to get up to speed while the competitive action was going. If we're able to get guys like Nygren in nice and early for the start of pre-season, then I think that can only be a good thing going forward. I mean, if he can get a full pre-season under his belt, can already work his way into the team for the start of the competitive action, then I think it's a really good early sign, to be honest. I think he's very clearly going to be a starter for us. Maybe this season coming, we're talking a midfield of McGregor, Nygren, Engels. There seems to be an assumption that Real Hatate will move on. I kind of feel like that will be the case. And again, maybe that's why the club are being so proactive getting Nygren in, kind of learning our lesson maybe from when Kyogo left and we hadn't already signed a replacement. So maybe that's why this deal appears to be, being done, pretty quickly by the club and seems to be a bit of a priority. So yeah, midfield of McGregor, Nygren, Engels. If you've then got Bernardo, McCowan as other options who can come in from time to time, I'd maybe just be looking for like a deeper option, a alternative to Callum McGregor as well, and I'd be pretty happy with that midfield. Again, it's just making the assumption that Hatate moves on. He might not. If he doesn't, then even better situation there. But certainly really kind of enthused by this Nygren stuff. I think he's going to be a bit of a important player for us and a real creative spark. I will, of course, be finding out a little bit more about him as we go forward. Should just say, quick quiz question for you, make things exciting. So Nygren will become the 10th Swede. That's a person from Sweden to play for Celtic. Can you name the previous 9? And all I'll say is the emphasis is on play, so they have to have played a competitive match for the club. Okay, have a wee think and I'll read out the answers at the end. Other transfer news today, Michel-Ange Balikwisha, an update from the, what did I call him, the Belgian Fabrizio Romano, Sasha Tavolieri. He X'd yesterday evening to say talks between Celtic and Michel-Ange Balikwisha are still underway. The left winger's keen on the move. Balikwisha, another player whose contract is up relatively soon. He's out of contract with Royal Antwerp next summer. I think reading between the lines, they need to generate a little bit of cash and they're looking at potentially selling a few of their key players. And this is realistically the last window for them where they can make some sort of significant money on Balikwisha. I think the chat earlier in the summer was we could be looking at like £5 million. I do think it's interesting that, I don't know if you've noticed this, but with a lot of our transfer targets so far this summer, we do seem to be mentioning contract situations. Now, I don't know, maybe that's always the case. I'm trying to think back to like last season, for example, where the likes of Engels and Trusty and Ida were their contracts running down. I don't think so. So maybe that's a bit of a kind of conscious effort from the club that they feel they can get real good value with certain players whose contracts are coming to an end. So you think Nygren, you think Balikwisha, obviously like Callum Osmond is we're getting him as a free transfer, etc. Cross-border compensation. Ross Doohan, I guess a wee bit different, out of contract. Kieran Tierney was clearly out of contract. So I just wonder if, as I say, that's maybe a conscious effort for the club. And I know there was a bit of a debate. I saw a debate going on in the comments earlier in the week about, is this Celtic trying to get the cheap option because we're getting a lot of these players for little or in some cases no money. But like, I don't think the transfer fee should always dictate the quality of the player. I mean, Kieran Tierney, for example, isn't a £0 player, which is effectively what we're getting him for. If we were to actually sign Kieran Tierney when he was in contract, I think Arsenal would be wanting a bit of money for him, probably more than we could even afford, to be honest. And, guys like Nygren, as I say, you'd probably be looking for triple what we're maybe going to pay for him, maybe more than that if he was in a long contract. So again, I've not got a problem with it, as much as I think we all like the idea of Celtic spending money. Maybe, as we found out last summer, spending money doesn't always necessarily guarantee you stars in the team. And if the club are being a bit more clever about it and are looking at certain players we'd maybe get for a little bit cheaper but have the quality to really add something, then I'm pretty happy with that. Just going back to Balikwisha as a left winger, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, our left wing situation at the moment, because we have Dyson, who is a left winger, but obviously didn't play there all of last season. And we also have Jota, who is a left winger, but isn't going to be with us for at least probably the first half of this coming season. So with that in mind, you do kind of feel like we need a left winger, but also we could have a situation, say we sign Balikwisha, say Dyson's a left winger, and when Jota comes back from his injury, you could have effectively 3 first-choice left wingers all vying for one position. Plus, you've got like the likes of Kuhn, Forrest, Yang there on the other side as well. So it would feel like that was a bit too much for that one or those 2 positions. But also I understand that at this moment in time, I feel we need a left winger. I know I did a video yesterday on the striker situation where I spoke about Brendan clearly seeming to prefer Dyson as a left winger. I do just wonder if we sign someone like Balikwisha, whether he may end up seeing Dyson as someone who can just play through the middle. Adam Ida can play there a bit as well, and we can kind of make it work. Yep, Balikwisha, I've kind of covered the stuff. Again, I'd need to find out a bit more about him. I will do that if the signing moves to the next stage and it looks like it's going to happen. recent injury troubles that would concern me a bit, but equally when he plays he seems to have something, and crucially he seems pretty keen on the move as well. So that's all rumbling on. In other huge summer news that you'll definitely care about, we've got Greg Taylor and Luke McCowan away on holiday with their tops off in Formentera, which is one of the Spanish Balearic Islands, along with, of course, Mallorca, Menorca and Ibiza. Taylor was said to be close to a move to PAOK last week, but then the news came up that PAOK were close to signing John Joe Kenny. Taylor has now pulled out of the move as a result, I think. Doesn't seem like he's going to be with us though, but we do have Kieran Tierney. Just a brief overview of where we are with the squad. Goalkeepers, Doohan's going to come in, you're fine with that. Right backs, absolutely fine. Centre backs, we're talking Inamura. We'll wait and see if that moves happens. Again, you may have some reservations over that. Do we maybe want a different profile of player for that position? Left back, we've got Kieran Tierney in. We need someone as an understudy to him, basically. We've had a few names mentioned so far. Kasuji, gone a bit quiet there. Guy at Hearts, who I promise I really like, but I've just completely forgotten his name. It's not Prentice, but it's something like that. James Penrice, I was very close. A bit of chat about him as well, whether that be doable. I'd be quite happy with him as an understudy to Kieran Tierney, but we need to sign someone there. Midfield is going to be bolstered by Benjamin Nygren. That's good. We've been linked with plenty of wingers. Clearly that's something that the club are keen on. Callum Osman's going to come in probably as our third choice striker. Ideally, not going over old ground, but I do feel we need a first choice striker to come in. But I don't know, if we sign Balikwisha, do we potentially look at, as I say, Dyson and Adam Ida being able to cover that position between themselves? So I think all in, it's been a pretty positive start to the window. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but as I say, like this time last year and even a bit later in last summer's window, it just felt like nothing was happening. The club were like, I don't know if they were purposely dragging their heels or if the setup just wasn't in place to be able to get players in. We seem to be struggling negotiating transfers. Like certain transfers were just dragging on and on and on. And I don't know this summer so far if it's a case of the recruitment team just being restructured a bit better. Maybe Paul Tisdale starting to get stuff together. I think quite possibly the fact that we have a Champions League qualifier and we know, maybe we finally realise how crucial these qualifiers are, that Brendan's just made it clear, we need to get players in early, we need to get this squad firing for this match, because there's no doubt at the end of last season that was a bit of a concern how the season petered out. So maybe all that's coming together and we're seeing a bit of a different Celtic here. Very early days, as I say, people will be pointing out we've only actually officially signed Kieran Tierney, but it does just feel like the club are kind of acting more decisively here, and there's certainly a few signings that seem like they're not too far away from happening. So I guess the next step would be for the club to actually get these finalised and get the likes of Nygren and Osmond and maybe Inamura into pre-season training right from the start, and let's just really attack this thing early on. As I said yesterday, we're only 2 weeks away now from Celtic playing their first pre-season match, and you know what pre-season's like, it's going to kind of ramp up relatively quickly, and very soon we'll be getting ready for that first league game. Soon after that we'll be getting ready for the biggest 180 minutes of the season in that Champions League qualifier. So yep, feeling good about things. I'm liking the players we've been linked to so far, Nygren especially. Let's hope we can get that one over the line and feel even better about ourselves. Cheers everyone, see you later. I got you. There's still the answers to our question to go. I bet you thought I'd forgot. Okay, so it was the 9 Swedish players to have played competitive football for Celtic, and they're all, I think, played in the 21st century, or certainly part of their state of the club is in the 21st century. So starting with the furthest back to the current day, we've got, of course, the King of Kings, Henrik Larsson, Johan Mjällby, Magnus Hedman in Bayern Munich away, etc. Daniel Mistorovic, who can forget him? Freddie Lundberg, who you might have forgotten here. But yeah, he is Swedish and did play for us. Mikael Lustig, of course. John Guidetti in that Inter Milan goal. Karl Starfelt, you're all likely to have got. And the most recent one, Gustav Lagerbielke. So yeah, a lot of really kind of good ones there. There was also a goalkeeper, Victor Noring, some of you fancy ones out there might have thought of, but he never actually played a competitive minute for the club. The thing that strikes me with the Swedish players is they've all had some sort of impact, like you remember them all. So I think we'll say the same about Nygren, but he's set to become the 10th Swede to play for Celtic. Right, I am finally going, everyone. Goodbye.